rain falls mainly on the plain.
Very good.
Where is the plain? Okay.
The plains of... I know where the plains of Africa is because I'm a big fan of Toto. So... Hello and welcome to episode 81 of a Sideways Life podcast. I am Al.
I'm Leanne.
And we've been travelling since 2017. Probably left the UK 2013. So we've done 46 countries, about 120 Airbnbs, about 250 places we've stopped. And how many gins have we drunk, Leanne?
Oh, thousands. Good times.
Well, this is part 2, isn't it, love?
Yes, it is.
So part 2 of the first part was episode 80 last week, which was 76 things that might catch you out in Spain. Now, you might be wondering, why are we talking about Spain? Well, we've been here for summer, for 3 months over Spain. It's the place that we got our best language skills in Spain. We've spent so much time in Spain, about 5 years in Spain, haven't we?
Yeah, probably maybe even a little bit more over the years.
Yeah, and so last week we talked about... we sort of grouped all of these things, these 76 things that can catch you out, into different categories. Last week we talked about culture. We talked about eating and drinking. We talked about language. And though we went through each one of those categories, went through the things that both of us have found that would just catch us out as I suppose we are foreigners, we're guests. We keep talking about this guest idea, don't we, Leah?
Yeah, I think that's important. If you are new to expatting, nomading, traveling, expatriate. Yeah, I think it's a good mindset to have, to remember that you are a guest in someone's country. If some cultural norm isn't to your taste, that's on you, my friend.
So today we're going to talk about transport, talk about weather and living, shopping, and then the last 2 bonus rounds are things we can't get our heads around. And as I say, this is just us as guests. We're not used to this. And then things to avoid upsetting the locals. So we'll come on to that. So do you want to kick things off with transport, Leah?
Sure. So transport. Now, this might just be applicable or raise an eyebrow to the people in the world who continue to drive. I think we started, didn't we? Whatever, let's not get into that. Those countries in the world that drive on the left-hand side of the road. As you know, most of continental, in fact, I think all of continental Europe drive on the right-hand side. Mm-hmm. But if you are from Australia, if you are from Pakistan, I want to say Indonesia, but that might not be right.
I don't think Indonesia, but I think that it is in either Thailand or Myanmar or one of those.
Thailand, it's Thailand. Of course. Then yes, you will be used to driving on the left-hand side. And you may have noticed that the same when you're walking down the street and you pass somebody, you'll stay on the side that you're used to driving. So if there's not, you kind of, someone's approaching, you go left, they go left, you pass seamlessly, you don't get that weird, sorry moment. In Spain, they walk on the right. And I guess it's because they drive on the right?
Yeah, and we found that in lots of European countries, people will come to pass you. We're walking towards you, and they will pass you with you on the right. They'll pass you on your left, and you try and do it any other way, and they look at you as if you're a bit weird. And so, yeah, I think walking on the right is it's a bit of a weird one. It's a very strange one, but still, this just seems to happen in Europe.
It does, something to be aware of.
So the next one I've got is parking. Now, when you park in a public car park or on a street or something, in a lot of Europe, particularly in Spain, you're going to get something called besos, which is kisses. And that's a very euphemistic way of saying someone's going to basically crash into the back of you or the front of you at some point in time.
Yes, I think it's important to know that in Spain, bumpers are a functional part of your car. They're not there to look pretty. They're there to bump. And I think my favourite thing is when you're sat in a cafe somewhere near a square or near a road and you're seeing someone parking, they're just slowly bumping the car in front of them forward an inch so they can get in. We actually saw one dude pick up an entire motorbike and move it. Brilliant.
So parking, yes, there might be private parking with your apartment, but even that's not safe because we stayed in Sevilla, I think we stayed in the underground car park, and we came back down. And to be fair, our car at the time was maybe about 8 or 9 years old, but there was a huge big scrape along the front of it that matched perfectly the Mercedes that was sitting next to us in the car park, and they had a similar corresponding scrape on the front of his or hers. And it was just essentially they'd come in and gone, oh, it's tight in here, isn't it? Oh, goodness. Yeah, I've just caught that car. Never mind. Let's go and have a beer.
And something to remember as well, if you are driving in Spain, particularly once do you know what, even in some of the big towns like Seville, Granada, Malaga, but particularly if you go up into the country, into kind of mountaintop villages or Pueblos Blancos as they're known, the roads are tight. They are so I can't even tell you how tight it is. Like you'll see a wall going down the side of the road and it's just like splattered with different shades of paint where people have scraped their mirrors. It is so tight. Even us now, I think we was with it last weekend, we basically just held our breath the entire time getting through Arcos Centre. So bear that in mind. If you're bringing a brand new car to Spain, try not to be precious about it because it will get some pesos. It will.
Okay, so what's number 3?
Number 3 is buses. So if you want to get public transport, and you should, it's very affordable. A lot of them are hybrid now as well, so good for the environment. But if you want to jump on the bus, chances are, depending where you are, you will need to get a plastic card and charge it up, a bit like an Oyster card in London, right? Charge it up with money and then you tap it on the sensor when you get on the bus. In certain cities, they will also accept cash, but typically you'll have to have less than €5 in change if you want to pay in cash. So worth bearing in mind. And in terms of tapping it up, usually at the little kiosks you see, tobaccos as you can normally top them up, maybe the odd little corner shop.
Yeah, and often it's quite a bit cheaper, maybe 60% of the price if you do pre-charge your card. If you're staying in Airbnb, just ask your host; they'll tell you where to get a card. If you're using Android phones, then you can charge them from your phone. If you're using iPhones, we discovered that Apple doesn't allow that because it's got a monopoly on the. I don't know why they don't. There's some technical reason, but it's probably just because Apple are a bit greedy. Anyway, so moving on with these then. We found in Spain and in a lot of other places, public transport still insist on masks. We were in Luxembourg. We went waiting for our last bus home from the centre of Luxembourg to maybe 3 kilometres to our house. And we didn't have a mask with us. We got on the bus and we got kicked off. So always take a mask with you, and there's a very good chance you're going to get kicked off. If you don't get kicked off, you're probably looked at very, very judgmentally, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a good thing. I mean, particularly in the UK, I understand, I don't think there's masks have been there for a while now, apart from maybe in hospitals, but there are a few places in Spain where they are still required, public buildings included, and pharmacies, which kind of makes sense, actually.
Makes perfect sense. So what's your next one?
My next one and our last one under transport, sticking with the public transport system, is trains. There are some wicked high-speed trains in Spain. So if you are coming and you don't want to bring your car, but you want to travel around, don't worry too much. Yes, to get to smaller places, it might take some time or you'll need to hire something. But if you're going from city to city, there are some incredible train links. Malaga to Madrid, for example, is about 3 hours. To Barcelona is about 5 hours, and it's so far away. It's insane. And really quite cost effective as well.
Yeah, and they have the speed in the carriage. The carriage is really nice. They're like sitting on a plane, on a nice plane. And it's got the speed above the carriage. So it'll show you the little LCD display, how fast you're going, which I think it was 245 kilometers an hour, I think, at one point on our train. Very fast.
Speedy.
Okay, so the next section is weather and living. And we'll whiz through these because I think most people know that the weather in Spain is incredible most of the time.
The rain falls mainly on the plain.
That's true. Very good.
Where is the plane?
In the sky? I don't know. What?
I don't know. Anyway, carry on.
The plains of... I know what the plains of Africa is because I'm a big fan of Toto. So,
what a tune.
So, first thing you need to know about weather and living is that the beach is a big thing. The Spanish, understandably, do not fuck around when it comes to this. So, Leanne will probably tell you some stories, but basically what you'll find is you'll go to the beach and forget the whole putting your towel on a sun lounger thing.
Amateur.
Yeah, amateur. What the Spanish will do, they'll turn up with literally a gazebo, a trestle table, if not 2, a barbecue, 6 or 7 different cool boxes with drinks, with chicken, with whatever in them. All these different chairs that fold down into the size of a postage stamp. fold down the size of a postage stamp, but they fold out. They've got everything you could possibly need, in fact, to have a day at the beach, and they do not mess about, do they, Leah?
They really don't. It's quite impressive, the setup that you will see on the beach, particularly if you're going to more local beaches. So if we're still talking about Spain, east of Malaga, for example, you're going to have a lot of this type of setup, local people going to the beach. You're not going to have as many like beach clubs with the sunbeds that you can rent and stuff like that. Of course, west of Malaga, when you're talking like Costa del Sol, you will. So you'll probably be all right there. But yeah, and it's expensive as well, you know, those little beach chairs, some investment in that. So yeah, if you're gonna go to the beach like a local, yeah.
And they bring the whole family. So it's not. So you'll see there'll be like 17 of them all sitting around a trestle table at 2:00 eating what looks like restaurant food that they've just basically brought out of their bags. So it's a wonder to see. If you are in Malaga area, then as Leanne said, go west if you want to go and see the tourists and pay for your sun lounger per hour or by the hour. Go east if you want to go to a place called La Cala de Morales or El Rincon or even El Palo, and you'll see the Spanish doing it Spanish style. That sounded a bit weird. That sounded a bit rude. That
it is epic. It's an amazing thing to see. And finally, this next one might maybe contradict what we've just been saying, but typically summer during the day is all about avoiding the sun. I think that's true, really. That you'll probably see less and less people on the beach if you're somewhere local in August, just because it gets so freaking hot. But in terms of the daytime, I mean, it really depends where you are, but we've been slightly in the interior and we've been looking at 36 most days, 38 to 39 some others. Sunday, I think we were nearly pushed 40 and we couldn't actually go outside. It was just too much. And everyone else is the same. Towns are quiet. Everything is quiet. The summer during the day is just about avoiding the sun. If you are outside, look out for those beautiful, particularly in Sevilla and Granada, they have bars and restaurants with outdoor air conditioning. They just like squirt like mist of cold water at you. It's delicious. But otherwise, yeah, you're avoiding the sun. You're certainly not sitting out in the direct sunlight at 2 a.m. because you will.
2 p.m.
2 p.m. Yes, you will catch fire.
You will. So they do things like drop the blinds during the day, and you'll find there'll be all kinds of things. You'll find that a lot of traditional houses have got very small windows, which means that they are quite dark houses, but they're also stay quite cool. So going on to the opposite side of the year, winter is not that much fun. Going back to this idea of Spanish houses having small windows, they are very well insulated against the heat. But it also means that there's very rarely central heating in houses in Spain. The nearest you probably get is the air conditioning, which will turn on to heat if you want, but that's an expensive way of doing it. So what the Spanish traditionally tend to do is they have like a big circular table that can fit maybe 8 people around it. And it's got...
If that, it's pretty small, maybe like 6. And you'd be like touching elbows.
Fair enough. So 6 people sit around a circular table. The circular table has like a skirt on. So you basically you lift up the material that's attached to the table, put your legs underneath, drop it back down again, and underneath is usually a fire. You know, it used to be coals back in the old days. Now it is electric heaters. There's a particular name for this, and I'm really sorry, I've forgotten. I should have researched, but there's a particular name for this. But you'll often find that families will sit there and stare at each other for about 4 months over winter, play cards, and obviously talk, because that's what the Spanish do.
Yeah, winters are chilly wherever you are. And I think that is, as Al said, the problem, that typically Spanish houses are designed to keep the warm out. So yeah, some good things that we did. If you don't want to sit around the little table, you can buy like the old gas heaters, you know, like your nan used to have, with like the grates and stuff. You can buy those quite cheaply. Gas is real cheap here. You're looking like, what, 5-6 euros for a canister? That'll probably last you at least 6 weeks being on almost constantly. So that's pretty good. Electric heaters can be good. And as Al said before, you know, dropping your blinds, opening your blinds in summer, getting that sunshine through and helping to warm the house up. But it is chilly. Get yourself some warm clothes and a big old duvet for bed at night, because it is cold.
It is. Okay, so, and also, by the way, siestas aren't always about sleeping They're just about breaking from the sun, getting away from the sun. So you'll often find like 2:00 in the afternoon, you think, oh, maybe it's nice. I've had a busy day at work. I might nip out for a drink. Good luck if you're in the campo, because that's the countryside, because most places are closed, or they will be closing at 3:00 because particularly in the weekday, because that's the hottest part of the day and they don't want to stay open standing there in black trousers and white shirts.
Absolutely. And I think the last thing to say about the weather, particularly in summer, is flies and mosquitoes are a part of everyday life. And there's lots of paraphernalia that you can buy, from sprays to plugins to candles to fly squatters to...
Fly squatters?
You know, that the swatters, sorry. They do squat the flies, though. They do. But yeah, particularly September is awful for flies. So just prepare yourself.
Yes. And it's one of my favourite things is to go around killing flies. And do you know, I might have just put off a section of our audience who are flyologists, perhaps. I don't know. But okay, so moving on to the next section, which is shopping. Now, this brings in some interesting quirks. The first one is, and it's going to sound a little bit racist when you say this, Leah, so I'm going to make you say this. What's the first one?
So there are a lot of shops. You know, like imagine in the UK, I'm not sure what they would be in the US, and get in touch, tell me what your equivalents are. But in the UK, you get things like your Poundlands, your Home Sense, your shit shops that have everything.
Shit shops.
But they're like, you can get a watering can, you can get some moisturizer, you can get nappies, you can get like a tin of dog food, you can get pillows, you can get everything from the shit shop. Mm-hmm. Well, in Spain, they're usually branded as Chinese bazaars. Mm-hmm. So they'd be called like Bazaar de Chino or something similar. Lucky Seven, yeah. And what we have come to learn is they're not always actually owned by people in the Chinese community in Spain, but they're branded in that way by other Spanish people who own them. It's all a bit odd. But if you need anything, as I said, super glue, you want to go to the beach, you need all your paraphernalia for that, go to the Chino. Honestly, they are usually vast, huge places with everything you could possibly imagine.
Really cool places. And as you say, stationery, the lot is brilliant. Okay, the next one is that if you're coming from particularly Northern Europe, or I'd imagine the US and Australia, supermarkets don't open until 9 a.m. and they often close at 2 and then reopen at 5 and close at 9 p.m. So those of you who like getting up early and getting the shopping, it's not going to happen in the supermarket, but there are local shops that tend to open a bit earlier. Whilst we're in the supermarket, then the majority of supermarkets, there is a self-check for fruit and veg. I'm not saying that very well. When you get your fruit, your 16 oranges, for example, you get 16 oranges, for example, then generally in the UK, then you will have those all prepackaged. Whereas the majority of fruit and veg is you have to go and weigh it yourself, put in the code, and then it prints out a sticker and you put it on your bag. I feel like I've made a meal of no pun intended, a meal of that, Leah. Have I explained it properly?
No, exactly that. So if you have loose fruit and veg, typically in the UK especially, you put it in your bag, you take it to the checkout, and at the checkout they will weigh it and they will price it up for you. In Spain, you have to do that yourself in the fruit and veg section. Same in Croatia, actually, for not everywhere, but for some stores. I cannot tell you how annoying it is to be stuck behind a tourist with a mountain of fruit and veg and they haven't weighed anything, because it's not like they can weigh it at the till. They have to then take it to the customer service or back to the fruit and veg area to weigh it out, and everyone's just like standing there and you look like the biggest tourist in the world and you feel embarrassed, and behind you like, oh. So remember, weigh your fruit and veg.
Exactly. Places like Mercadona, Carrefour, all those, make sure you do it. Okay, so what's next, Leah?
Next, if you don't want to go to the supermarket, then there are towns where the supermarket will come to you, including Malaga. Certainly, once you get up into the country, into the little villages, bread, gas, vegetables, fruit, water, you can all get it delivered. They'll either come past your house, usually around the same time in the morning, and give you a little toot toot to let you know that they're there. You'll run downstairs. Or with, I think particularly with things like water and gas, you can actually arrange for them to be dropped off. So that's quite nice. It's like delivery, but a bit more impromptu.
Definitely. Going back to supermarkets, though, if you do prefer to stay in supermarkets, and let's be honest, it is a little bit. You feel a little bit safer going to a supermarket because you can see where everything is. Whereas I went into the bread van man yesterday, and I only know like 4 different types of bread, and he didn't have any of them, and I was like, oh, so I ended up having just to buy something which I thought was what I wanted. But if you do go back to the supermarkets, then just bear in mind that a lot of them have parking underground, particularly the Mercadonas, which is great. Keeps your car nice and cool. But you will often have to get a ticket and validate it at the till. So I know this isn't a new thing, but just bear in mind, there's nothing more annoying than going down.
We thought it was annoying being stuck behind someone who weighed their fruit and veg, but stuck behind someone in a car who hasn't validated their ticket, and then everyone's having to reverse up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
don't be that guy.
Be that guy.
Okay, what else you got?
So I'm going to group these next 3 together because they're all kind of around payment etiquette. So in smaller shops, and this is something we actually saw as well in Australia, in bigger shops as well, but in smaller shops especially, they will tend to round up. So if your bill comes to €4.95 and you give them €5, chances are you're not getting any change. If you do get change, then actually the custom is typically there's a little plate next to the till that you'll often see like little 1 cent coins or 5 cents or 10 cents coins in. And usually the etiquette is if you do get change, you pop it on the little plate. So that next time somebody is in, because they'll round up, but they'll never round down. So if your shopping is then €5, 5 cents, and you haven't got 5 cents, you've only got your €5, it's perfectly acceptable to look at the little plate, take the €5 off, and give it to the
5 cents off.
Sorry, there's 5 cents, not the €5. Quite right. You've got €5, you take 5 cents from the plate. And which is quite nice, actually. That's quite a nice idea. But yeah, particularly in petrol stations, you see that. And in petrol stations as well, just be mindful that in about 60% of them, I'd say, you need to prepay.
And also, some of them, particularly in the country, they'll come and actually fill you up like they did back in the 80s. Which is quite cool. Okay, so these next couple I'm going to group again together because we've already mentioned that supermarkets close in the afternoon. Particularly, there's something called Coveran, I think, which is like a kind of a spa franchise where there's lots of little shops, local shops. They will almost certainly close in the country in the afternoon. If you go to a town or a city, then quite often you'll find that the bigger ones won't close, but they will have a quiet hour. And this is a bit of a strange situation, but the idea is that there's no music. It's during the siesta hours, and you can go and shop, but you can't, you shouldn't bring children to scream or whatever, because this is just everyone's chance to have a little bit of quiet time, which is obviously very welcome for introverts like us.
Yes, very civilized. Very, very civilized.
What have you got next?
I think just to finish off the shopping thing, did you know that if you have a can of pop or even a can of beer and you buy it from the shop, you'll pay more if that can is cold? I learned that the other day. I was like, what, really? And quite a bit more as well. I'd already bought my can of Coke, looked around and saw the fridge because I couldn't see the fridge. Like, oh, there it is. Asked if I could swap and she said, yeah, of course, but it's €1 more. I was like, €1? You are right. I'll call my own can at home, thanks.
Well, you say that, but you've been shopping in the wrong place because I went to my favourite little place in Arcos where they love me because I went in there asking for an orange and they only had one scrappy old orange sitting there. And I said, it's just my gin and tonic. And she went, you can have it as a gift from me. And I went in there the other morning to buy you a pop and there was a cold Coke, but no cold Sprite. And so I took a warm one to the counter and she said, wait, went under the counter, took a cold one from the fridge under the counter and swapped it over for no extra cost.
Well, clearly I am shopping in the wrong places.
And the last thing we've got to say about shopping before we move on to the things we can't get our heads around and things to avoid is that you'll see on the streets a lot of people who are selling lottery tickets. There's kind of like 3 different types of people selling lottery tickets. There's the lottery office, where all they do is sell tickets. You'll find that the Spanish do like a lottery. There's like 17 different types of lottery. So there'll be those, and they just go in there and you buy a lottery ticket. Then there will be people wandering around selling lottery tickets. They'll have a stamp on the back often, and what they've done is bought it from the lottery office and then going around and trying to resell it, generally to tourists, for a bit more. So unless you might want to support those people. Some of them are a little bit down on their luck. So in that case, that's fine, but just bear in mind that you are paying more than face value. And the final type is something which I think I've only ever seen in Spain. It's called, I want to say ONCE. It's spelt ONCE. And it is generally the people who sell them are in some way disabled. And so, and you'll find that they will sell the tickets and a proportion of the profits go to help out the disabled, which is a really nice way of doing things. So if you see them, they're usually in green. If you do want to buy a lottery and you fancy giving back to someone, then it's definitely worth buying from them. And there is something called the Loteria Gordo. Is it El Gordo, is it?
El Gordo, yeah.
Which is the Christmas lottery, which is like a massive lottery. People are buying it in August for this Christmas lottery, and that's the big one. It's called El Gordo, which is Spanish for the fat one or the rich one. I'm not sure which one it is, but the big one, basically. Okay, so that concludes, I think, shopping. Now, should we talk about things we can't get our heads around?
Yes, I think by things we can't get our heads around, it's like maybe when we first got here, we were like, what? But then, it's just these little quirks, and we're not saying it's wrong. It's just like, okay. I think the first one was when we first came over to this part of the world, was when we were planning our wedding, and we actually stayed on the border of Gibraltar and went into Gibraltar, and it was early December. But it was beautiful. It was maybe like 22 degrees during the day, bright blue skies, a bit of a nip in the evening, but the days were beautiful. People in Spain do not dress for the weather. They dress for the season. And we've had this confirmed by some local Spanish friends that we've made. So, for example, if it's December, people are wearing like warm clothes, big coats, scarves, trousers, boots, the lot. It's December. It doesn't matter what the temperature is. It's December. Similarly, if you get a cold day in July, they're wearing shorts and t-shirts. It's July, my friend.
Exactly. It's a beautiful sight, and I kind of admire them for it, because the Spanish are generally very, very stylish nation. Particularly if you go to Seville or you go to Barcelona, you go those places. They're amazing people. And so why not show off your winter clothes, even if it is 25 degrees outside and you're sweating like I don't want to use that. I don't know an appropriate way to say sweating like apart from
very
the ones
warm person.
Apart from the ones that my friends and my dad used to say, which I'm pretty sure were okay in the 70s and not okay now. All right, so the next one is, it's a bit weird, but petrol stations have smoking areas outside. And if you're from particularly the UK, can you imagine stepping outside your BP and just lighting up a cigarette and just like tapping away in your cigarette while someone about 3 to 6 feet away from you dispenses petrol? You still can't smoke when you're dispensing petrol, but there is a smoking area outside petrol stations. So don't be too surprised when you see that. You'll also find probably there's a tapas area as well, because most petrol stations have some kind of restaurant or tapas attached to it.
Which is the thing anyway, actually. Restaurants, I think we talked about this in the food and drink. Restaurants can be on the road and they'll look a bit run down, but they're actually usually pretty good.
So what have you got next?
So next I think is kind of a bit around the economic position around Spain, or situation with Spain, and I guess the preconceived notions that you have as a foreigner when you look at statistics. So statistically, yes, there is high unemployment in Spain. There is particularly high youth unemployment in Spain. That said, there are a few different aspects to this that we feel, and again, talking to local people, feel that actually the statistics may not be giving you the full picture. So, for example, people don't tend to buy houses here. They'll tend to inherit them from their family, from their grandparents, from their parents. They'll get passed down generation to generation. So while income may be lower, whether on unemployment or in employment, they're typically not paying rent. On top of that, multi-generational living is really, really common. So it's unlikely you're going to get somebody in their 20s living on their own. They're probably going to be living with their siblings, with their parents, with their grandparents, with their auntie and uncles. It's quite typical for that to be the case. And if they're not living in the same house, they're living very, very nearby. The other thing as well is, particularly in places like Andalusia or tourist places where there is a lot of seasonal work, a lot of cash in hand work, which is the same in the UK, let's be honest. I think there's a case of officially people are unemployed, but unofficially they're working at their auntie's cafe or their brother's bar or their dad's barber's and getting cash in hand. Or, well, I'm usually while studying as well, actually. Education here is quite a big thing, isn't it? Right into your early 20s.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I don't know, this is probably a function of the fact that the average income or the average provable income is relatively low, but cars are not status symbols here. As we've talked about before, your car will often have Besos on it, though kisses, where someone else has smashed into it. But it's just not a thing, really. I mean, it might be now in Madrid or Sevilla or somewhere like that, but generally you go to a medium-sized town or smaller, and the kids are knocking about in Seats that are older than them, because it's just not a thing. They just don't care about the car. Whereas I know definitely in the UK, and I'm pretty sure in the US and Australia and Canada, is that, you know, the aspiration is to have this BMW 5 Series, whatever. There's no point in Spain because, number one, it's going to cost about twice as much because it's really expensive to buy cars in Spain. Number two, your auntie's probably got an old Ford Fiesta that she's going to give you for nothing. And number three, it's just going to get scratched and bashed. So cars aren't really status symbols. So, and that also has like the other thing to it as well, which bear in mind that if you see someone in an older car, a 20-year-old car, and this, let's just say a fella, he jumps out of his car, his shirt is misbuttoned up, so he's got buttons in the wrong thing. He's stroking the back of his head, looks like he just doesn't know what the hell's going on. He could well own like half of the village that you live in, which is like our old landlord who looked like he lived on the streets and actually owned the majority of the village, didn't he?
Hola, Pepe, ¿cómo estás?
I doubt that Pepe
Pepe listens, but yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's the thing, you know, you might be quick to judge when you look at certain statistics. You might be quick to judge when you see certain cars. You may be quick to judge when somebody is 30 and living at home with mum and dad. It's a different culture. It's a different thing. You can't apply the standards of where you're coming from to another country. It's just not fair and it's not right. If you really want to know, ask some polite, respectful questions about somebody's life and how they live.
And yeah, like you said, it's a perfect example. You don't judge them based on your own standards. And people in Spain don't have this status thing of having huge houses that they can't really afford, having cars that they can't really afford. Whereas in the UK, our feelings when we go back is more and more people are buying things they don't really want with money they don't have to impress people they don't even like. And I think it's just the opposite over here in Spain. So as Leanne says, do not judge anyone. You could be talking to someone who's got 3 times as much money as you, and they could be driving around in a 25-year-old Peugeot 205.
Yes, so moving on, let's talk for American listeners, the holidays. So Christmas, other festivals, things that go on through the year. There are many, many festivals that happen in Spain, usually around something religious. So yes, if you're whatever time of year you're here, you'll probably see some kind of festival, which is really cool. The great ones and the big ones to look out for is the annual feria that will happen in a lot of towns and cities, usually over a few days for a week. If you do go to the ferias, they are massive. They'll take over the entire city, or they'll take over an entire fairground area. Just bear in mind that they will have bars in that area where you can buy drinks and food. Typically, particularly for drinks, it's not a cash bar. You have to go somewhere else and buy little raffle tokens first, and then go to the bar. So just bear that in mind, because again, you don't want to be that person who just ordered a load of drinks and you can't pay for them. Just don't be that person, you know. And the other thing as well is Christmas. Christmas is incredible in Spain, but also very different in how it's celebrated. Al, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, without going into, because it is quite different in the north and the south, and it's also becoming a lot more westernized. Well, I don't say westernized because Spain is west, but it's becoming a lot more sort of anglicized in that Christmas Day is now Christmas Day. But traditionally, the children used to get their presents on the 6th of January. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Then there is there's a big parade, and it's called Los Rios. What's it called?
Yeah, it's the Three Kings, isn't it?
Yes. So 3 kings. And so, again, there'll be one of those kings will possibly be in blackface. I don't think it's in any way. I mean, I don't believe in any way it's offensive. It's just if you're going there, you might go, okay, well, there's a Spanish guy, usually with boot polish on his face. It's just the tradition. So one
of those things you just can't get your head around. What this category is about, you can't get your head around it, but okay.
Christmas Eve, they tend to eat big family meals on Christmas Eve. As you can imagine, in a very Catholic country, it's all very family orientated and it's around the kids. And so Christmas is an amazing time to come to Spain. And if you have the opportunity, definitely come to Spain. Granada is a great one. Malaga's another one. Come along and just stay for like the 10 days over Spain. It's got two advantages. First of all, you get away from your family and friends. For some people, that's a good thing. But secondly, you're going to experience something totally different. And I think that it's such a great opportunity to see how the Spanish celebrate. You've got to go on the 6th of January to the Three Kings Festival, where generally it'll be like an old-fashioned 1980s float coming through. Basically, Christmas Pride, but for Christmas.
That's a really good way to put it, yeah.
And one of the fun things is that the kings coming down there will have huge bags of boiled sweets they will fling in your face, and so it's potentially you might lose an eye. But
the idea is the kids have all got bags and they try and catch them or pick them up off the floor, but they are typically boiled sweets. They will, yeah. If you catch one in the forehead, quite sore. There's
also a cake as well, which has got things in it. It's a circular cake in like imagine a big party ring.
Do you know, we've talked about this before.
Have we?
We've talked about this over Podmas. If you're interested about Christmas in Spain, go back. I believe the episode is called Feliz Navidad.
There we go.
Go listen there. We talked about all of this with all the right names and everything.
Okay, so things to avoid upsetting the locals. This was one which was specifically asked for by Tom, because I'm hoping that Tom's not looking to do these things. I'm hoping Tom's looking to avoid these things. But he was asking us, what is it you could possibly do by mistake that would offend a local? So do you want to kick things off, Leah?
Yeah, I think the first one is probably quite an obvious one, is assume that everyone speaks English and do that weird Brit abroad thing of speaking to them more slowly and louder and assuming then they'll be able to understand you. Don't do that. No. One of the best phrases you can learn is, do you speak a little English? Hablas un poco de inglés. And that will just help somebody to then say, either if they have a little bit of English, go a little bit, but not much. Or they're going to go, yeah, of course, you want to speak in English? Fine, what do you need? And you're like, okay. But it's just that polite way to ask. And if people don't, then, use your Google Translate. The app is amazing now. You can type it out, you can speak into it. Just do your best to converse on an equal playing field rather than just demanding or assuming that somebody else will speak English.
I think that's good advice no matter where you go in the world. Okay, so number 2 for me is don't go shirtless, even in beach bars. I wouldn't have that much. If a woman wanted to go shirtless, I wouldn't have that many arguments for it. But I think for example, someone like me who's a 45-year-old, slightly flabby white man whose boobs hasn't seen the sun ever, then I wouldn't ever consider doing it. But there are people who come on holiday and they're obviously, in terms of chesterly, they're much better looking than I am. But they'll still wander into beach bars with the shirt off, and it's just, although it's not like they wouldn't get kicked out or anything, it's just a little bit of respect for someone's business. Now, I mean, we are talking more traditional Spanish, again, east of Malaga rather than west. You go to Marbella, and that's an expectation, I'd imagine. And no, nothing, I'm not shitting on Marbella. I'm just saying that's kind of what happens. But when you go into a restaurant or a bar, which is somewhere that's not particularly touristy, just stick a shirt on. You don't have to button it up, just stick it on.
Absolutely. And I think that, the next one we've got here is not taking people at face value, like assuming somebody is unemployed, poor, whatever other words you want to assign to it. Just don't make that assumption, because chances are they own half the village and that's the person you need to be busy mates with to get a really great place at a really good price. So yeah, don't make that assumption. I think the only other thing that I'm saying, and it is unavoidable, you can't avoid it, but avoid getting angry about it. And that is the bureaucracy in Spain. Paperwork is a thing, like paper, not like online. Some of it is, but most of it is actually physical bits of paper that you need to go and get notarized. Do we even know what that is? I didn't know what that is until we moved to Spain. You basically take this office called a notary, and they're everywhere, where you go in with the person who has also signed this document. They stamp it for you. They give it some kind of fancy seal. They scan it. Basically means they're going to put it onto the local government records that this is an official document, legally binding document. And then once you have that, you can apply for other things like your NIE or your residency here, or buy something. Or paperwork is everywhere. It takes ages. These notaries are usually only open for about 20 minutes every other day. So just avoid getting hepped up and angry about it. There's nothing you can do. Honestly, nothing you can do. You just got to follow the system. I think we said this before when we talked on the Croatia podcast. If you can financially afford it, investing some money in somebody who is local, who knows the system and knows how to navigate it, it is well worth doing and will save you a lot of time. But either way, just go with it, my friend. Bureaucracy is real and it ain't going anywhere.
And before going to the last one, I was going to add to that is that often if you need to pay for a government service, they will give you a piece of paper that you need to go to a bank and pay at the bank with this piece of paper, then go back with the stamp to the government service. And generally what will happen is you'll find the pattern will be you'll go to the government service and you'll queue from 9 till 11. You'll get your piece of paper. You'll go to the bank and you'll find the bank is closed because everyone's gone for breakfast. Then you come back about 12, the bank is back open and you'll get your stamp. Then you'll go back to the government office and find that the guy you were talking to has disappeared off for his breakfast. And then you'll queue and then they'll shut at 2 o'clock and you have to go back the next day.
Yeah, and that's on a good day. The other days are when the process just doesn't even make sense. Like, do you remember when we got the dangerous dog license?
Oh, yeah.
Something else to look into as well. There's lots of dogs in Spain that are classed as dangerous in inverted commas. Dog breeds that aren't classed as dangerous in other places in the world. Rottweilers being one of them. But it was one of those things where we couldn't get him microchipped unless he was insured, but we couldn't get him insured unless he was microchipped. And it's like, well, how does that work? And of course, we can't apply for the license until he's both microchipped and insured. So it's like, well, what do we do? And in the end, I think we just explained this to the vet and she was like, yeah, okay. So I think she put a microchip in to get the number, but then didn't register it. So then there's all these little loopholes you have to go, which is why you don't be a dick. Be nice to everybody because you never, ever, ever know who you might need to call on, a local you might need to call on for a favour to navigate this whole crazy world.
Absolutely. And the last one before we wrap things up is that certainly in the 70s and 80s, there was a stereotype that the Spanish were lazy because they took a siesta. I'm sure you're not thinking that for a second, but you might, if you apply your home thinking to Spanish thinking, then you might go, well, I can't believe that they are taking the whole of August off. This family is shutting their shop and disappearing off for August to go and live by the coast. You know, that's not the way to run a business. Don't think like that. Don't start applying your own values to someone else's life, because the fact is that number one, August is a horrible time to work. Number two, if they're going to close between 2 and 5, there's a very good chance. And number three, more importantly, they value things much more importantly than just, I don't know, being the richest person in the graveyard, being the, having the coolest car. They don't care, generally, they don't care about that kind of stuff. They care about family, they care about having a great time, and they care about when they put them in the ground, they've got 100 different stories that they can tell about them.
Here.
So I think that concludes. We've gone on a bit longer. We're aiming for 20 minutes. We've gone for 40.
But there was a lot to get through in that one. There was a lot to get through. But I think I think the headline is don't push your norms onto somebody else and you'll be absolutely fine.
Exactly. And that works for Spain, anywhere in the world. Probably works for your home country as well. Okay.
It does actually. Comes back. Don't be a dick. We covered this in the last episode.
Okay, so next episode, which is episode 82, we're going to be talking about how we became the luckiest digital nomads in the world. Now, you didn't see my fingers when I said luckiest. I was doing those little rabbit fingers going luckiest because the complete bollocks. We're not lucky, but
spoiler alert, man. I'm tuning now, am I? I thought I was going to find out how you're lucky, but now it turns out it was bullshit from the start.
What you will find out is why we think we're lucky, even though some pretty bad things have happened to us. And so
that's a good tease. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, leave it there. Okay, so we'll see you next time. Bye for now. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.